What's up everybody, Mr. Gaff here, and today we're going to be talking about character traits. So we're going to look at a couple different things in this video. First, we're going to look at exactly what a character trait is. We're going to explain it and give some examples. Second, we are going to talk about why character traits are important, what it means to you as a reader and a writer, and how you can use character traits to better understand the stories that you're reading. 3, we're going to talk about whether or not character traits change and get into a little bit more complex stuff about character arc. I hope you're as excited as I am. Excitement. Through the roof. Not through the roof though, because then there'd be a leak and I'd get rained on. There would be mice. There might even be an owl who sneaks in there. Perhaps a bat. So first let's talk about what a character trait actually is. A character trait is an adjective or describing word that we give to characters in stories. Now before I get going, I want to divide the character traits into 2 main groups. I want to talk about external and internal character traits. Let's start with external because it's the more simple of the 2. External character traits are traits on the outside. External character traits are usually given to you by the author. You don't really have to infer or do much digging with them. They're a lot less complex than internal character traits and not nearly as important, in my opinion. So external character traits describe how the character looks and their physical appearance. Some examples of external character traits could be skinny, tall, I'm average, short, jacked, or muscular, like me, beautiful, not beautiful, you're all beautiful. So really, external character traits just deal with how a character looks on the outside. So let's move right along to what I think are the more important types of character traits, and that is an internal character trait. You want to think about an internal character trait kind of like a personality trait. Like I said earlier, this can be a word to describe how your character is, or how they react to certain situations. Internal character traits take a lot more from you as the reader to figure out, and they usually develop as the story goes on. So you have to be really careful, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, how characters develop throughout the story. Now as I've said a couple times, I like to think about internal character traits like personality traits. What is this character really like? Some examples of internal character traits could be things like mean, heroic, friendly, here you go, curious, oh, cool, sneaky, shy, evil, loud! And those are just a few examples. Now, as I told you before, the author develops a character as the story goes on. So you're going to have to figure out these internal character traits as you read your book. Now, to figure out what traits your character has, you're going to want to look at how they react to certain situations. If they are given a present, do they say thank you? Are they kind? Or do they say, I don't like that. That's last year's model. Are they a little mean? If there's a battle, do they rush right on in? Charge! Or maybe are they a little timid or fearful? There's a battle over there? My pizza's gonna be here soon, so I'll be like there and I'll be there, yeah, it's just gonna be here. It's gonna be here soon, so I'll just be there in like 5 days. So to figure out a character's traits, you're going to want to pay attention to how they react to events in the story, and also their inner monologue. Now, inner monologue is how a character thinks about certain things. You're going to get a lot from the author about your character based on their internal thoughts. Now, there aren't internal thoughts in every single book that you read, but when there are in good narratives and in good novels, you really want to pay attention to those to understand a character's traits. One other thing I want to mention before we move on is that most characters don't just have one trait. As you get older and you start to read more complex novels, your characters will become more complex. Someone isn't just going to be friendly and that's it. You can think about a character's traits like a pie.
I don't want to bring math into it, but I'm bringing in a little bit. Just a smidgen. A smoogin of math. A smoogie-poogie of math.
Maybe they're 80% heroic and maybe 20% selfish. So you can think about a character's traits as a character's values. What do they believe in? What do they hope for? What do they want? What do they strive for? Are they a heroic person who's honest, just, and loyal?
Or are they an evil villain who's selfish, mischievous, and perhaps a teensy bit obsessed?
So that's really what I wanted to talk about when we talk about character traits. External character traits, outside stuff, internal character traits, really important stuff that explains the character's personality. How do they react to certain situations, and what do they think about the events that are developing in the book? Next, we're going to talk about why character traits are important. Character traits are important because if you understand your characters, you can better predict or infer how they're going to react to certain situations in the story. If you know the main character in your story has a friend named Jim Bob Face who is a little bit sneaky, then you might be able to use that evidence about their character to help you predict what's going to unfold in the story. Because remember, your character is an integral part of the story. So the characters in the story are
linked like a meatball. They're all jammed together, they're delicious meatballs.
Now there's going to be many different characters in your story with many different traits, and knowing the traits of those characters will help you understand why they're acting the way that they are. If you have a couple characters who are timid or maybe a little bit shy, and one who's loud, you can understand why maybe the shy ones would come out thinking, well, hey, that guy's loud. I don't like him. I don't like him. That guy's too loud. That's me sometimes. And then you would also understand why maybe the loud guy's like, those people don't say anything.
They're not saying anything.
Hello! 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 Little throwback for the old folks. Character traits also help explain a character's motives. Now, a motive is just why you do what you do. Why'd you go to the fridge to get a sandwich? Well, you were motivated by hunger. Why were you sneaking around your mom's closet the day before your birthday? Well, you were curious about your presents. So character traits help us understand a character's motives, or why they do what they do, which is really important because characters in stories do a lot. At least I hope, otherwise it'd be a really boring book. Lastly, I want to talk about if character traits change. The simple answer is yes. Like I said earlier, your characters in your stories are linked together. As the story evolves, so do your characters. Now usually stories follow a nice little arc, so your characters are experiencing that entire arc. It's only natural that along the way, they're going to develop or change a little bit. Some characters change a lot throughout a story, and some only change a little bit. But you really have to pay attention to why they change. Usually this is due to some sort of traumatic event. Maybe there's a large fight, or somebody passes away. Those type of events have a big impact on us as people, just as they will on the characters in your story. Remember, most of the time, characters in your story are people, but almost always they have feelings, and you want to pay attention to those big events which could change a character's traits. Now, a lot of times a character will go from being really weak at the beginning to being super strong and heroic at the end. It is the arc of that character and how they develop which help to explain that change in their traits. Now, I know most of you are kids, but some events can also change a character for the worse. They could be betrayed or have something else really bad happen to them, and that sends them down maybe a mischievous, a sneaky, or an evil path. The most important thing to remember when you're looking at how characters develop is looking at what are the events in the story which led them to this point. How did they react to things that happened to them? And also, what did they think about those things internally? Now, if a character changes one trait, that doesn't mean that they're going to change every single trait that they have. Pay attention to what the author is trying to tell you. You're looking for evidence to back up whatever you think a character's traits are. Usually there is a pattern which starts to develop as the story progresses. Pay attention to those patterns and make sure that you're understanding how they all fit together to form this character. So guys, to wrap this video up, just remember that a character trait is a word that describes a character. There are internal and external character traits. External deal with the physical, the outside, and the internal is the more important one. How they are feeling, how they act towards others, and how they think. Their motivations for doing what they do in a story. Remember, if you know a character's traits, you can better understand their motives in a story, and you can also predict what will happen in a story based upon those traits. And lastly, remember that character traits can change. As your story develops, so does your character. And you want to pay attention to the events and actions in the story which can mold, shape, or change them. Remember that characters usually aren't just one trait. Like you as a person, you have many different qualities which make up who you are. It's the same thing for a character in a story. Remember, when you are trying to figure out a character's traits, not only pay attention to the patterns, but also the evidence that the author gives you. With more complex novels, you will have to do a lot of inferring and use your background knowledge to figure out exactly what the author is trying to tell you. But you can do it! That's it. That's all I have on character traits today. And I am done. Am I sweating? A little bit. Just a little bit. Not a lot. I'll say a little bit. A little bit. Little bit.